Yeah. Then we start with our roundtable. I think Professor Williams, because gave opening remarks, and he also will serve the last one to make a final conclusion about the e-society workshop today. We start from Professor Wang Zhenhuan. I think every one of you know him. He's a sociologist, he got an outstanding research award, and now is in National Zhenji University. He's a chair professor, chair the top university plan, and very important guy. So we are very, very happy to have him here. Please, Professor Wang.
Okay. The title of the roundtable is "The Future of E-Research," and I checked. Program of the workshop is the first one is okay. Turn off my microphone. The first one was ICT and the society, and the second is ICT and policy, the third Internet and politics. And so I'm going to discuss the issue on ICT and society. And this morning we have 4 papers and discussion. The ICT's impact on society and development of society. And I conclude that all the papers almost focus more on a negative side of ICT on the development of society, like anxiety of using smartphone, psychological egocentrism in using internet, and but I think the gambling paper is more interesting, and more not so psychological, more social. And I'm going to focus more on the social dimension. And I have 4 issues that are related to the future research of the e-society, and I think those issues are not really covered by today's workshop. The first one is the empowerment of the weakness by using internet. I think this issue is not really addressed in this workshop. For example, like Jasmine revolution in recent years, that is a revolution that is triggered by internet or Twitter or a smartphone or a phone. And also in China right now, Weibo, microblog, is really now trigger a lot of attention, and because it's, many people say that is the emergence of civil society in China, and really trigger. We need to pay much more attention to the empowerment effect by using internet or ICT instrument. And I think today's papers, there was one discussed by our authors on the formation of Salvation Army on disaster rescue by using internet. This is one of the examples, but I think we need to pay more attention on this dimension. The second dimension, I think we need to pay more attention to, but I don't really know whether there's another group on Zhejiang University is e-commerce, or the usefulness of electronics that influence the activities or the organization of industrial development. For example, because it's the use of e-commerce that make the possible of the outsourcing become possible. Lots of works are outsourced to different places beyond the motherland of the company. That is because by using internet, the company can control its outsourcing company, and by a different kind of activity. And it is not only in global production network, that kind of organization, but also occurring in innovation. And right now, you know, some teams in Silicon Valley that design something but can outsource to India and work in a round-the-clock manner. So you can doing something at Silicon Valley, and then after 5 o'clock transmit it to India, Bangalore, and then transmit back in the morning. So it is possible because of the use of internet. And therefore, this is another dimension that may be very important to the society. The third dimension, I think, or third issue that we may pay attention to is some of the paper talked about the social fundamental. That means the personal touch of the issue. That means that if we use a lot of ICT device, but many of the devices still go back to the personal or social dimension. And many people say, for example, like we need to have a community, and we have virtual community, but most of the time people still need to talk, need to have personal gathering. Therefore, to have more communication, and in fact, in innovation studies, and people are saying that because of the use of internet, therefore we have virtual community, therefore we don't need personal relation or network. But one of the geographers says, okay, digital technology may be adapted at maintaining community that are already formed, but they are not so good at creating them in the first place. Therefore, personal touch is still very important, even when we do innovation study. And also, I think the fourth issue that related to the paper that I discussed in the morning is social shaping of the technology. And many technologies they develop in the society because it's a need from the society. A lot of new innovation of new devices are created because of the need and demand from the society. And many of the technology, in fact, adapted to locality and reinvented. So like the example of gambling. And also we can use another example because I'm doing a China study and right now. And the good example is Professor Robin Williamson uses SAP. It is a very high-end business accounting or operational system. And in fact, it's used by the very good company in the first-tier cities. But many Chinese companies reinvented, or you can say it's pirate, or reinvent that kind of business system, but adapted to Chinese environment and invented suitable for Chinese company. And therefore, this company sell those products to the second-tier city, the enterprise of second-tier cities, and make a lot of profit because, for example, it's very interesting. You know, Chinese enterprises need to have two accounting systems. One is for the state for tax reason. One is for personal reason or for evade tax reason. Therefore, the Chinese company would create that kind of accounting system, ERP, and they make very successful. And that kind of technology, you can say is a kind of piracy, or you can say it's adaptation to the locality, and they are very successful. The one is 拥有, in Chinese is 拥有 uniform, is in the north, dominant in the north, in the second-tier city and down to township and countryside. And the other is Jingye, is based on Shenzhen. And they are competing against SAP right now at the first-tier city because they make a lot of profit because of they sell those products to the second-tier city and even countryside. You can say it's like a circling city by the countryside. 毛泽东's word, 用乡村包围城市. Therefore, they are very successful and creating technology based on social demand. It's a kind of technology, social technology, or social shaping of technology. I think those this dimension also can be addressed. In fact, even if we apply this concept to Taiwan, if we using the example of e-commerce, I think there are a lot of examples that we can study beyond the gambling example, the case studies. Okay, I raised four questions, not question, it's four dimensions that we may have to pursue for in terms of the future of e-research. And I better end here, maybe we can discuss later. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Wang. Thank you for your especially prefer. I feel it's a social shaping technology, and also you also involve some mainland China studies. Also maybe from this perspective. Then next one will Professor Lin from Academic Sneaker also got an outstanding research award from the National Science Council. Now is a coordinator of our political science sector in National Science Council. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Liao and honorable guests. It's a great honor for me to be here because I just realized that in less than 2 hours, I traveled from the Taipei MRT to Kaohsiung MRT, so I can make a very interesting comparison about how you use iPhone. That's a very interesting experience. Let me tell you my thoughts. Of course, here it's very hot, and as you can see, Taipei is kind of not so hot. The thing is that because I've been here many times years ago, and I noticed people on the Kaohsiung MRT is more like Taipei. They use iPhone. They use other devices, mobile phones. They look at the whatever, iPhone or whatever. And so they are more alike. So that the new technology, as mentioned by Professor Wang, has not only changed the way people communicate, but also changed how people behave, especially young ones. Especially, I wouldn't say it's correct, politically correct, but I have the impression that female passengers are more likely to use their iPhone. And I don't know what they're doing, but obviously they are talking to someone. So my idea about the future of this study in whatever discipline is to look at the past. Because you don't have the past, you don't have the future, right? So we can do a comparative study, we can do a time series analysis of what has been done in the past about the study of, say, internet or e-governance in political science. It's quite interesting because we know that the e-society has become a very important part of our life. But how about ourselves? Are we studying this e-society or e-politics or e-governance? That's a very interesting question. And so I will start by raising some questions to you, guests. In the past 6 years, there are, let me see, I just counted the number. The number of political science projects sent to the National Science Foundation. How many? 2,076, right? That means each year we will have 346, roughly, about 60% of the political scientists. How many guests are related in whatever way to e-governance, internet, whatever? Guess. Health? Guess again.
One quarter.
1/4? Guess again. Very good. I use data mining techniques to find the keywords. I think my count is accurate. You want to guess again? 29. 6 years.
29%.
No, 29 cases. 29. Yes.
Less than 10%.
No, less than 2%. Right. So that's my conclusion. That we have a long way to go. No, I'm joking. We have a long way to go. We have some interesting pattern there. Of course, the number has been growing. In 2000 and let me see. In 2005, there are only 2 cases, all related to e-governance. And last year, there were 9 proposals applying for the National Science Council for grants. and the rate for them to pass is roughly the same as the other project. Is 45% to 50%. Now, the interesting case is that there is a long, long way to go. And you can actually look at each of the 29 cases carefully. What are they? Why bother you study e-governance or whatever, internet? Of course there are some project might be related to the use of internet, might be related to the, governance in a new way, but we are far, far behind the trend of people walking on the street or taking MRTs, because people are using that. Of course, when you use iPhone, of course you have to be connected to the internet, but people are far, far less from taking. Sorry. Yeah, I'm the coordinator. I'm joking. Well, I'm not joking. I'm the coordinator. Yeah, I'm a real coordinator. Fortunately, my term is going to be over. I'm very glad about it. So that means we are far behind the people's actual life. So the next question is, what topics are the 29 cases studying? Unfortunately, if we really look at the 29 cases and count, who are they and where they are, you will be disappointed, because most of them, of course, are working in public institutions like here. And most of them are in their early 40s or even 30s. And probably only one or two cases are over 50. Okay, so that means that's quite interesting. So people are catching up with the reality, but we do see that there is a huge gap between what's going on and what the people's grant has been proposing. And now, what are the 29 cases? At the beginning, from 2005 probably to 2007 or 8, predominantly by public administration, by people working in public administration. It's understandable, right? Because Taiwan's government has been trying to promote e-governance. So there are some studies, I wouldn't say a lot, there are some, or most of the 29 cases at the beginning actually are about the e-governance. And there are some interesting topics, of course, about whether e-governance really enhances efficiency or something like that, and the conclusions to this. And about whether e-governance is really helping people to get information, which is very low end. Is e-governance helpful? Something like that. Only one case is about the model of e-governance. That means really about how e-governance can be enhanced, in what way, and how the different government branches should be connected. Only one project about that. And that is for the beginning, dominated by people working in public administration. But now, 2010, there are 9 cases, and it becomes more interesting. It's no longer dominated by people working in public administration, but still the trend has been from the effective side of governance. That means how far government efficiency has been improved by the connection between people and decision makers through the internet. Only 1 or 2 cases is about China, security and China. That means it's almost ignored by people working in international relations. Mostly it's dominated by people in public administration. So what I'm hinting at? What am I hinting at? It's predominated by people working in public administration. Some people in international relations care about China or area study about, say, unfortunately, about whether the Chinese government has been effectively regulating the internet uses. There's some, and that's the only case we have. And what am I hinting? I'm hinting that there is a huge, huge gap to be filled by comparative politics. That means that's what we are doing actually. We care about how far people's information obtained from the internet has been affecting their voting choices. We care about young people who mostly just use internet to get their information. So how do they cast their ballot? Isn't that a wonderful topic to be explored? But very few people are paying attention to that one. And of course, we know that, for example, in this election, in 2012 election, presidential election, we know that the key candidate has been paying high attention to young people, right? Because they may cast their ballot, and determine who's the winner. And we know that they're using internet to gather information. So why don't we pay attention to that? So that is a huge gap between what the researchers or the scholars have been doing and what really is going on in the society about comparative politics. And how do people get information? We know that now most people just don't use flat media. People just get their information from the internet. So how do they form their political knowledge? That is a very important topic. And how do people make their decisions? Do they talk to people whom they met in the internet or Facebook? Or do they talk to their friends? That means the internet has been dominating our life, but we are still far from being really sensitive to what's going on there. So that means there is a great gap to be filled by comparative politics. Of course, public administration is still very important. And on another dimension, we know that last year has been dominated by authoritarian regimes about the internet, right? We know that some of the revolutions almost you can imagine that in Egypt, Tunisia, and a lot of countries, those young people are actually motivated by internet. It's unimaginable. It's unimaginable. 5 years ago, you will have this kind of mobilization capacity. No matter whether that is true or not, but that's an important topic. We don't actually care about it, but I think that's a very important topic to be done in the future. Now, so what is the hindrance? What is the obstacle for Taiwan's political scientists to do that? I think obviously we are still dominated. The discipline, political science is still dominated. I'm very glad that Professor Wang is a sociologist. I'm very curious about your discipline, whether sociology is any better, because we are still dominated by two disciplines, two approaches. I'm sorry. One is the very quantitative, survey-based, TEDS-based, I would say, TEDS-based, questions, surveys, and then from there, you can dig as much as possible whatever interesting question there might be, although I don't think there are not very interesting question there, because it's a compromise. Once you have TEDS, you have to make compromise to different scholars who want to put their questions there. So it's a compromise. So how can you make interesting questions out of the compromise project? I think that it's very important. You can experiment different ways of different statistical models to see how far you can dig something interesting out of the compromised TEDS, but I think that there's still a long way to go. So on the one hand, political science has been dominated by survey research. On the other hand, political science is quite interesting, has been dominated by area studies. And actually, this is a trait of our discipline, because we, at least in the United States, I don't know much about England, much about the UK, we care about what's going on in other parts of the world. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't say we, they should. The people in the US, Washington, care about what's going on in Taiwan, right? So they have someone studying Taiwan. So they care about the empire, if you want to say it in that way. So we have been affected. So if we say get our PhD from the US, chances are that we will have some expert who is specializing in a certain area. So these two approaches has been dominating our discipline. So what is the hindrance? What is the problem for us to move in to the e-society or e-governance? I think the more knowledge about technology is very important. And we have to think about workable, feasible topics that can persuade people, but that is not based upon quantitative survey. Basically, because of a very simple reason, because our data is not random sampling. So we don't actually make generalizations very easily, but that means we still have a long way to go. So that is my tentative conclusion when I travel from Taipei to Kaohsiung and make a comparison and see, wow, it's becoming so similar. So we have a long way to go, and I guess, especially for younger generations, for young scholars, I think there is a long way to go. Because we know that the internet and the scientific, the technology there has been going very, very fast. And we know that computers now can do many, many crazy things, but we are still far behind. So this is my tentative conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Lin, as always.
He always make a kind of very interesting remark. We appreciate he look into the real life from his experience in the high-speed rail and also both subway from Taipei to Kaohsiung, and look to the past and look into the NAC project and then tell us how far we are behind the kind of current research trend. Thank you. What a sad story. Okay, now we turn to Professor Schumann. Yeah. A shorter class, maybe 5-6 minutes, because we want to end around 6 o'clock, and Professor Robin Williams will make a final conclusion. Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I apologize if I fell asleep earlier. Hopefully not too much. So I have a bit of a unique background. I have spent the last almost 20 years as a political science student or a political science professor, but I am also very much involved in the development of tools and methods through my work funded by the National Science Foundation to develop better procedures for citizen government interaction online. And so in the context of regulation making in the US, in particular in the context of very large numbers of public comments, sometimes tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of public comments. And so I was involved in the development of a research group that worked on integrating research between social scientists and computer scientists. And as a part of that work, we were building prototype solutions for dealing with large numbers of comments. And as a spin-off of that, I was to develop some free open source software, which is hosted on the web, for doing qualitative data analysis, and also for creating training data for natural language processing research, machine learning, and information retrieval. So the open source software is called the Coding Analysis Toolkit, and through the development of these software prototypes and actual functional systems, I've come in contact with a great number of government officials in the United States and come to better understand the problems they face in dealing with these large volumes of comments. And now at this point I find myself commercializing the technology and running a small startup company and dealing with the likes of Dell Computers, Google, QVC, big companies who, interestingly, you would think they would have solutions for all problems, being innovative, profitable, multinational corporations, and in fact, they have all sorts of problems for which they have no solutions. And so, whether you're a student or a faculty member, or a government official, or an official, or in a company, in the private sector, you can face many of the same problems, which is taking analysis of text to scale, beyond what we can normally do by ourselves. And so now we're trying to lead the way to make certain tools available to non-technical experts so that they can, for example, train custom machine classifier to perform certain types of tasks that we formerly would have done on our own. And some of these technologies are not necessarily new. They're technologies that computer scientists use and their graduate students use all the time in the laboratory, but they haven't yet reached the desktop or the laptop or the web browser of the average user, the non-technical expert. So we're trying to bridge the gap, whether it's a government official or an employee in a corporation who has to read lots of open-ended comments. So surveys are very popular inside of companies, as they are in the research world. But what often happens is the text, the open-ended text that people write into small boxes on computer screens, is often neglected, especially if it's numbers in the hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands. And so I have an interesting seat, academic, entrepreneur, qualitative researcher who has done all sorts of qualitative research by hand using traditional inductive methods, and also large-scale qualitative data analysis or coding of text for the purpose of training machines to help humans work with very large piles of text. So where does that leave my perspective on the future of e-society and research and government? Well, I feel very optimistic, actually, about where things are going, because there are so many problems that we can help solve, and there are so many ways in which the creativity and the genius of academia can be brought to bear in a practical world. And so if I have an opportunity in the future to interact with any of you, my goal would be to share that vision with you for a better way of dealing with these problems.
Thank you. She was optimistic perspective to look into the e-research future, because it's so empty, so we have a lot of role to play in. And also, please, Professor Williams.
Thanks very much. I'd also like to repeat thanks for the invitation, because it's been very exciting to come here and meet lots of people and hear all this research. And I hope this is the start of a discussion. Okay? But I wanted to talk, I was asked to talk about the future of e-research, and it seems to me there are at least three things in there. One is research into e-society. The other is doing...
To show your slides.
I could.
Yeah, sure. Why not? You already unpin everything.
So it seems to me that there are three things. One is researching e-society, which we've been discussing today. The second is using the internet as a means for doing research. And the third thing is studying what's happening as scientists use these tools. So we're doing three kinds of things that you might call e-research, which seems to be worth exploring. So first is, well, the thing that we're interested in doing at the moment is exploring the traces that we leave as we use the internet or as we carry our mobile phones around. And I have to say here, when we're thinking about this in Edinburgh, we're feeling that there is much to be done. And in the UK, sociology has made a qualitative turn. The enormous success of interpretivist research of ethnography has actually dragged people's attention away from quantitative research and away from the tool, using the tools that might follow on from that. So UK sociology has been almost entirely bypassed by these various attempts to mine the data about our movements and about our transactions that our mobile phone and our engagements with the internet use. And that volume of data is growing quite explosively, but social scientists, UK social scientists anyhow, are not using it. Instead, that work has gone to other disciplines. It's gone to geographers with geographical information systems. It's gone to physicists who've got power, who run supercomputers. And it's gone to the private sector. And I think the consequence has been to weaken both data mining and social science. So social science is not contributing to a discussion about how to interpret these traces, and the data miners are not being informed by insights into what it means, what these data traces mean. So we get some very mechanistic interpretations of what's happening in that world. So there's a gap that needs to be overcome in the UK, maybe from what we've just been hearing, needs to be overcome in Taiwan as well. Online research is interesting, and we had a discussion this morning about computer hacking, and Paul Taylor was my first PhD student. And it was okay to use the internet as a means of accessing hackers, because that was, well, the hackers were by definition online already. Although I think we need to remember you'll all recall the kind of failure of the opinion poll to predict correctly the Roosevelt election, because they used the telephone and didn't realise that the average American voter wasn't always a telephone user. So we must remember people who are excluded if we're using the internet as a means of accessing communities. But there are new and radically different opportunities to access. I mean, one of the things that my colleague Neil Pollock did, he's a very charming man, and he managed to get this industry analyst to give him his email system. So we were able to see 10,000 email messages So we could see not only who he was talking to and what he was saying, we could track this enormous web of exchanges that this guy was money with. And that was extraordinarily insightful. There's no other way you could actually be there at all these places and times. Ethnography couldn't be there, and it gave us, well, I don't know, was this qualitative or quantitative research? Well, it was obviously both. So extraordinary new opportunities for analysis which are opening up. And the third point is e-ethnography. I mean, even the anthropologists who would die if you tried to code a piece of data are now playing with videos. And something very strange happens when you use video as a research method, which is that when you present a paper, you give the video of your respondent as part of your presentation. And actually that gives the respondents direct voice, rather than being selected by the researcher, but the audience are really quite astonished to actually see the person speaking, see where they're working in the presentation, rather than being mediated through the sociologist. So it's a very different kind of research when ethnography. So I think these new tools have a lot to offer different kinds of research. And I suppose, going on from what I said this morning, we need to look at the benefits of combining qualitative research and larger scale methods. And we've just done a study of the biography of e-science, which is emerging practices where scientists are using online tools. And we're trying to understand how life sciences share data, and we gave them questionnaires and online diaries to complete. And then we also did interviews and focus groups. And through this, we were able to reconstruct in a very detailed way the division of labour, the different roles that exist in the lab. So the project leader has a very different role to the co-investigator, to the lab technician, to the PhD student. So actually, when we looked at the people's insertion into the division of labour, we could understand the questionnaire responses. If we'd put them all together, there was no way we would have made sense of the radically different networks of interaction and exchange that our respondents had. So we had a survey which covered apples, oranges, pears and bananas, but by combining those formal methods of study with ethnographic methods of study, we were able to make sense, we were able to reveal patterns of information exchange between labs. I'm very glad, I apologise for using a PowerPoint, because PowerPoints simplify the world, and but I was really pleased to be able to use it, because I wanted to show you this beautiful picture. And we were able to produce these maps of what was happening in labs in terms of what kind of information processing exchanges were taking place. And we were able to do this for half a dozen cases. And show that each lab had a very different pattern of collaboration and exchange, characteristic of that kind of research. And that was a combination of qualitative and quantitative that we found that very, very interesting, very important. But then the question is how to combine qualitative and quantitative. And I examined a very interesting study by a Taiwanese PhD student at the University of York. Huang Guochuan was doing a study of the accident reporting system in Taiwanese schools. And he was an engineer, he was a soldier and an engineer. Yeah? And so he started off, he believed the models, he started off looking at the statistics. He spent a year analysing the statistics that this system was reporting and trying to make sense of that. And then he made a little bit of sense, but he was puzzled. And then so he did a large-scale survey. And then he began to make sense of that, but he was still puzzled, and eventually, and his supervisor, who's a friend of mine, had been asking him to do this from the beginning, he went and talked to people, and he found some very interesting things. That the schools, for example, will not want to report sexual abuse by teachers or drug use by students on the system. Why? Because, especially the private schools, no parent will send their kids to a school if they have these kind of problems. So lots of things are underreported. They don't want to report child suicide because that's morally shocking. So they've distinguished the category of where the father kills the whole family from the category where the child kills themselves because of the moral shock associated with the latter case. So the reporting pattern is very uneven, depending upon the experience and beliefs and understanding and context of the actors. So when Dr. Huang did the study, when he spoke to people, he understood fully the difficulty he had with the statistics which he started. But his belief system said, statistics, large-scale survey, ethnography. He trusted in the statistics most. Actually, if he'd done it the other way around, He'd have had a far more comfortable and helpful process. So there's a question about how we combine them, and I have to say I think that the move should be from qualitative to quantitative. And then finally, I suppose one of the things that we're interested in doing in Edinburgh is to reconsider our own sociological perspectives. And Edinburgh is the home of Goffman, who wants to analyse the situation, the place that people are in and the way that they construe a situation, such as this discussion. Trevor Pinch said we need to, he had a paper called The Goffman of the Internet, and he criticised the attempt of people to have one way of analysing face-to-face relations and another way of analysing computer-mediated communications. But maybe they're all social stuff, but maybe there are different affordances of communication between online and communicated media. Knorr Cetina, and somebody I can't remember who it was mentioned Knorr Cetina, tried to apply Goffman's analysis to analysing foreign exchange actions. And she does a very nice analysis of the culture of these guys high on steroids. Their hormone levels are very high as they do these million-dollar deals. What was interesting, of course, is that she only looked at these men, and they mainly are men, as they were doing their deals, and she ignored the whole pyramid of people that went underneath her that ensured that the trades that were agreed over the phone or over the internet were actually implemented. So she'd actually cut out of the picture 99% of the players, which was that hard. And so in Edinburgh, we're trying to do a job of work trying to get classical sociology, ethnomethodology and interactionist sociology to extend beyond local situations. So we're trying to transform our own discipline in ways that take care and pay attention to the increasingly computer-mediated character of our social life. So I think there's an agenda that's really worth addressing there. I'll stop now.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know whether we have questions from the audience. For very brief, only 5 minutes. Any Q&A? Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. And I think this, the Professor Robin Williams covered almost every possibility and will show us how to do a research in the perspective so-called E-tool, this kind of tool. But any response or any kind of questions, doubt? Okay, Professor Zhen, please.
Just a show response. I think an issue I think that haven't been mentioned by the full professor here is about the generation gap, and I do believe that's one of the reasons why there is so few studies because I'm a young scholar, but in the internet age I'm kind of old. I mean, for example, like I cannot make a film from the material from the internet in about 45 minutes, but all of my students can do that. And that's very different because, so when we think about how people use internet, but for them that's not the problem because that's how they grow up. So I do think that the generation gap, it creates a new kind of, I would say, digital divide. We always say like class, race, and geography, but I think generation and age may be a very important thing. But and that's also explained because professors generally are older, so we look at a new thing, but that's their everyday life. So I think maybe this kind of gap, be aware of this gap may help us to do more stuff, a better study in this society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Professor Liu.
Just a quick question now. Should we deliberate or form an agenda for e-society studies? Because I think almost every discipline can claim they have E. And they can do anything they have been doing and then cross the hand to E, to internet. But I don't see much, I think that's good to see the diversity. But in face of a lot of problems that everybody claim that we have to solve, should we now, in face of a new cross-board research, then we have the agenda telling us what to do first, or it's not important at all? Just let us keep flying our own wings.
Kind of research agenda under the so-called e-research plan. Okay. And anyone want to answer that? Okay, Professor Liu, another Professor Liu, young female Liu.
Not answering, but another question, but probably related about the future agenda. Because I think this e-society research people, you either besides the voting behavior, but sort of the engagement, the political behavior, including their expression of opinion, it's sort of driven by sort of the government or the actual practice. We're sort of constrained by what has actually happened out there, right? So that we then have data to study their behavior. And I guess now in Taiwan, for instance, some of those open platforms does not apply here in Taiwan because we simply don't have those open platforms for citizens to express their opinion on the internet. But I just wonder from the experience of UK or the US or in Taiwan that this kind of when our study is constrained by what's actually happening, by the government or the private, can we take a more active roles as a researcher, set up an experiment to actually implement the practice and things like that? So that's just my question.
Okay, thank you for your question. Do you want to answer, Professor?
Okay.
Well, I think we make final conclusion and we can discuss some more during the banquet period because it's really it's running out of. I will think from 5 angles to think about the future research, or not really future. I fully agree with Ji Wen is we look to the past and we then evolve into the future. First thing I think from the current literature, we found most of the literature in the beginning study how to use the ICT tool to first make money, second to serve people. Right now a lot of e-governments try to use ICT as a tool to serve people. The second dimension I found is that a lot of research now focus on what the impact the ICT really is exercise on society. A lot of angle to study what kind of impact the ICT really exercise. The third, I think, is really interesting. Just beginning the social shaping technology. It's so philosophical, and also Professor Williams and also Professor Wang mentioned about the kind of ethnographic approach to study the kind of social shaping technology. Maybe also relate to what you asked, the government kind of action actually influence our research agenda and our thinking perspective to look into the research phenomenon. The fourth one I think is I feel that's a problem we really encounter. Just how to analyze or observe those data we gathered from our kind of ICT tools. We have a lot of ICT tools. We have our iVoter platform, but we how to analyze, observe, or using this data to tell an interesting story. We have a lot, plenty. I think that's a kind of challenging. It's there, but how to use it. The fifth one actually relates to Robert Schumann's expertise. He's going to deliver a lecture in Tsinghua University. How to govern the new tool in society. The rulemaking is actually a very big domain. In the beginning, I tried to invite a professor from law school to report how to make the so-called scientific law. And she's going to Harvard. Because Harvard, there's an e-center in Harvard under law school. I think the rulemaking on governing the new phenomena technology is really the trick of the whole game. Yeah, that's my observation. I think a lot of things deserve our further thinking. And as I also agree, we are far, far away from kind of definite research agenda. Thank you, we should end here. Okay, thank you. We move to the Warping Ambassador Hotel to have our dinner relaxed. Thank you.